He's your favorite fearless hero.
Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. It's been quite a long time since we've seen the legendary fairy tale feline. Or at least it was for me, because I've honestly never watched the Netflix series. Ever since his debut as the bounty hunter turned ally in Shrek 2 back in 2004, Puss immediately made himself equally as iconic as his already famous co-stars. In fact, he went on to become the most famous depiction of the fairy tale in modern pop culture history, which makes that one of the few moments that DreamWorks managed to beat Disney at their own game. Eventually, the fame of Puss in Boots got so big that in 2011, he got to have his own spin-off movie. I kinda get why this isn't as popular as some of the other DreamWorks films, since despite being a box office hit, it was released at a time when people were ready to move on from Shrek after he bowed out with Forever After. But after recently rewatching this to prepare myself for The Last Wish, I have to say that this was a really fun film. Sure, it's not in the league of the first two Shrek movies, but it did capture the spirit of the character with this fairy tale themed action-packed adventure with some good comedy and enjoyable characters. I'd honestly even say that this is a pretty underrated film, and I recommend that you go check it out. But after 11 years and a complex production that took as long to develop Puss's encore, he's finally back to continue the Shrek legacy of twisting fairy tales in many unexpected ways. So now that Puss is on his final life, will The Last Wish feel like a dream come true? Or is this cat getting a little too old for any more swashbuckling adventures? As Jill said it best in the first film,
well, let's find out.
The story. Much like the last adventure where he teams up with Kitty Softpaws to retrieve the goose that laid the golden eggs, Puss is on a mission to travel through the dark forest to find the wishing star alongside Kitty and his new companion Perito. But he has to get to it first before a new batch of fairy tale baddies make it to the star. This may sound pretty simple at first with this entire hunt for a wish, but it's actually a lot more complex. Especially with one extra obstacle that makes it the most difficult for the cat. You see, Puss is in his last life, and unlike before where he's so carefree in his adventures, he has to be a lot more careful with himself or else, well, unlike what he says, the legend will indeed die.
What do you wish to do with your last life?
When you only have one life, that's what makes it special.
Sure, as you come in, you get what you'd expect coming from this movie, still staying true to the spirit of its predecessor as it's loaded with twisted fairy tale action. You'll certainly have a lot of fun watching Puss and the gang escape peril and take down villains throughout their journey, but the heart that's actually the driving force of the picture is what the characters wish for. From within, it's a character-driven narrative where they all try to pursue their one wish. However, the movie uses it to display the message of what you wish for may have always been in front of you this whole time, allowing the characters to have more depth and the strong emotional core for the audience to connect with them on that level. This is especially the case with Puss, whom for the first time comes face to face with his mortality and even goes deep in regards to what legacy would he leave. Sure, he always says that the legend will never die, but now that there may be an end to it, he has to reflect if his legend is worth remembering or if he spent his 9 lives wisely. In a way, it results in the film to be surprisingly thought-provoking, challenging the definition of what is to live life to the fullest, and how it's who you're with that says more about you than what you did.
Cool! Another member of the team! I'm Puss's therapy dog!
Definitely not!
Finally! You need therapy.
But of course, as it technically counts as a Shrek movie, the comedy is an essential part to the picture. And I'll say that it's pretty good. Not great, but at least enough to be amusing. Much more than the first, there is a lot of references to several different fairy tales and classic stories, many of which I could say are recognizably Disney. And they're not even trying to satirize them either, they really are just cute little references. There will be plenty of times when those moments or the dynamic of the personalities will help make the viewing experience more enjoyable. However, I wouldn't say that this is comedy gold as much as something like Shrek 2, since it can happen when the jokes don't always work, especially when there are certain characters that aren't as great as others.
Can we look at the map now?
Still though, maybe this is not the funniest movie in the Shrek franchise, but with a powerful emotional core and some themes that can make you think, the story makes Puss's final life unexpectedly his most amazing one. The animation. As you probably first seen from the trailers or in the clips of this review, the animation is unlike any of the Shrek movies before. Instead of trying to make the CG look as realistic as possible, the team at DreamWorks decided to give the art style a total reboot that is more reminiscent to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I know that the people at the studio are huge fans of the film, and they've also mentioned that the movie was an inspiration for the style of the bad guys. However, The Last Wish does have a more justifiable reason for this look than just paying homage to it or animators enthusiastically saying, "I want to try that too!" At one point, one of the Spider-Verse directors, Bob Persichetti, was brought on board to helm the picture, but was eventually replaced by DreamWorks veteran and the crew's a new age director, Joel Crawford. But even if he didn't fully lead the project, his influence still prominently remains, and it is one of the best elements of the movie. One of the main features with this new style is how they really elevate the intensity of the action. Sometimes, when Puss has to combat one of the villains, the frame rate drops on the character animation to get a clearer view of the poses as they fight, while still maintaining a fast pace to keep the energy alive. They also include comic book-like effects to liven up the action and to visually present the hits as the battle goes on, rather it be the clash from Puss's sword or the physical blows that his adversaries take.
Pray for mercy from Puss in Boots.
Another element that changed with its visual update is how the colors are a lot more saturated. In the past films, I wouldn't say that their colors were muted, but it's noticeable that its color palette is subdued and, well, no pun intended, swampy. In The Last Wish, though, the colors are more alive and vibrant, making the movie a lot more mesmerizing to look at and easier than ever for the film to grab your attention with what's going on.
Oh, Kitty, you've got to trust me.
Wait, what's going on with his eyes?
But what I consider to be the biggest upgrade to the animation is the designs. The movie finally rejects Shrek's old realism in favor of capturing a storyboard look, where the characters are a lot more stylized and the textures are more painterly, as if the film was crafted by a brush instead of a computer. It's a style that fits perfectly in the Shrek universe because now they actually look like living illustrations from a fairy tale book, especially from the other effects that have a cooler simplified look like fire and liquid.
Puss, I think you set the oven too high!
Now I am on my last life.
Oh no!
Yes, this movie is breaking tradition by going with a brand new look with its animation, but the fact that it improved upon one of the weaker parts of the Shrek films alone is worth admiring the movie over. The characters. Well, you probably know the drill with these Shrek movies. You're about to meet some new interesting versions of classic fairy tale characters, along with a few familiar faces you already know. However, I'd argue that may not be the case with the latter, and I wouldn't be surprised if this would cause some debates among Shrek fans. You see, Puss in Boots is a lot more different than what he used to be, and I don't mean that it's because he's in his last life. In the Shrek films and in the first Puss in Boots, the Cub was a lot more of a calm debonair, someone who knows that he's a powerful force and has no need to prove himself, as if he highly valued and respected his sense of honor.
On my honor, I am obliged to accompany you until I have saved your life, as you have spared me mine.
I am but a humble gato in search of his next meal. Perhaps you gentlemen can help me find a simple score.
In The Last Wish, however, that completely changed where he turned into this outlandish rock star that craves attention and the glory of his name, as if he always has a need to shout to everyone, "I am Puss in Boots, muchachos!"
Doctor.
Relax! I am Puss in Boots! I have 9 lives!
Some could argue that this would go against his previous nature, but either way, I wouldn't necessarily say that this makes him bad. As he is in the movie, Puss is still very solid with how he went from a swashbuckling, fearless hero to realizing that he's no longer invincible. As he is in the movie, Puss is still very solid with how he went from a swashbuckling, fearless hero to realizing that he's no longer invincible. It allows him to reflect on his past lives and realizes what's been missing. Sure, there is the legend that everyone knows about, but there is also the other side of that legend that's not as glamorous. The kind that makes him question, what else is there to it?
Puss in Boots, you are down to your last life. You need to retire.
Alongside him, there's Kitty Softpaws, who's like his ex-girlfriend that suddenly got reunited with him, and since they're stuck in a tough situation again, she starts to consider rekindling the flames.
Is the great Puss in Boots asking for help?
Well, you see, Kitty, please.
And then there's Perito, whom I consider to be the weakest new addition to the picture. He's the clueless, optimistic buddy that sticks by Puss's side and wants to help out in any way he can. What honestly makes me feel unamused by him is that he feels too much like he's trying to be another donkey or like Olaf from Frozen. There's just something that feels artificial about him, and that he's only in the film for comedic purposes by emulating another successful character.
No hablo inglés.
¿Hablas español? Yo también. Ah, ¿de dónde eres? ¿Te gustan las siestas?
I don't speak Spanish either.
You're funny.
But I definitely cannot say the same for the villains. Along with the animation, the villains are the best new things from this movie, each with a different style of antagonist roles meant to cause problems for the cats and dog. There's Goldilocks and the Three Bears crime family, who are in their own personal pursuit of finding the wishing star. Of course, they are way more different than the ones we saw in the first Shrek, as the four are an entire team who we gradually see how they function not as a crime gang, but as an actual family, especially with Goldilocks as the bear's adopted kid and going into what she defines as a family. Next, there's Big Jack Horner, a more straightforward villain who's like the Shrek version of Elon Musk. A heartless big-name business owner who already has everything and all the privileges in the world, but wants the wishing star in order to have all the magic and the power in the world to himself. And then there's the Wolf, the assassin whom Puss fears the most, as he's always close by to finally take down his last life. He is honestly the most intimidating villain that DreamWorks had ever put out since Lord Shen in Kung Fu Panda 2. He's the one thing that is able to defeat Puss in a fight without breaking a sweat, and whenever he shows up or you hear his signature whistle, the film chillingly stops as the fear of Puss's end may have finally come. Not to mention that, I won't spoil it, but his actual role explains why he's so much of a powerful threat and why he has such a particular interest in Puss.
This is gonna be fun.
Not all the characters make a great welcome in this picture, but they still continue Shrek's legacy of giving us some memorable versions of the classic fairy tales, rather if they want to help achieve Puss's wish or their own. Oh, and by the way, keep your eyes out for certain cameos. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised to see them. As much as I enjoyed the first film, I honestly did not know what to expect coming into this. I mean, it's been 11 years since we've last seen the character. Not many animated movies are able to stand on their own after a long break like that. But after witnessing the cat's new look and his latest adventure, it just left me in awe. Puss in Boots: The Last Wish is not only better than the first, but it is the best film of the franchise since Shrek 2. With an emotional and thought-provoking story, amazing animation that is a significant upgrade from before, intense stylized action, and a new batch of great fairy tale characters with a twist, The feature brings back that old magic that made Shrek a cinematic icon all those years ago. I definitely recommend checking this movie out for an action-packed fun time. But I think fans of the Shrek films and people who love that Spider-Verse style will absolutely love this. And if you love this review, then subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. And you can enjoy even more videos and reviews like this to discover more movies that could be your next favorite. I was not expecting DreamWorks to make a big comeback in 2022 with both this and The Bad Guys, but now they make me feel excited to check out their movies all over again. And that's especially thanks to Puss in Boots, which is why I'm gladly giving this movie the Animat seal of approval. I'm sure by now some may be asking if this means that they'll be bringing back Shrek. At this point, after watching this, I don't see why not.
You're still here? Okay. One more number. I call this one, The Legend Will Never Die.